Howdy there, guys. So the devs released an actually really exciting quick play hack this time around, featuring pickable passives. For tank, you have Unyielding, which decreases the duration of debuffs by 40%, Armored, that just simply converts 100 of your health pool into armor, and Last Stand, which grants you a massive 50% cooldown reduction while you are at 50% or below HP. All of these passives for tank are really good, but I'd say Last Stand is easily the most exciting and playstyle expressive, so the best designed. For damage, you have Slayer, which allows you to see critical health enemies through walls, Trigger Happy, which increases ammo capacity by 20%, and Frenzy, which, whenever you score an elimination, grants you a 30% speed boost for about 2 seconds. Lastly, support's got Resourceful, which is just a flat 20% cooldown reduction for free, Swift Save, which increases your healing by a whopping 50% on any target, including yourself, below 35% HP, and lastly, Close Call, which grants you a brief 20% speed boost while you are below 50% HP. With that brief breakdown out of the way, I actually want to get into a little tier list here. I thought it'd be fun. It sucks that the quick play hacked is going to be ending so soon. I wish they would extend the duration throughout the weekend, but that's kind of a pipe dream. It'll be over tomorrow, but it's a really interesting experiment, and even though I wish they would extend the actual experiment out through the weekend to give more people a longer time to test things out and for more people to be able to interact with it. All in all, this experiment is really exciting, and there's a lot of changes and interactions to consider for the future if Overwatch 2 stays in a 5v5 format and goes down this more MOBA style of more unique passives for the different kinds of characters and kinds of roles there are in the game. Start off with Tracer. That is an easy frenzy. You just get so much out of the mobility burst that you get. It allows you to chase people down, it allows you to disengage. It is just such a strong buff for Tracer that it's really a no-brainer. You could go with Trigger Happy so that you can one burst targets a little harder, but that's a little bit more niche. Frenzy just allows you to do and get away with so much. Ooh, Reaper's a big one. He's also a giant frenzy enjoyer. Getting that extra bit of mobility for whenever, just like with Tracer, where you're able to W key harder and finish out a fight and stay within your effective range, or disengage super fast, especially in Wraith form after you kill somebody, you are just zooming, so easily Frenzy. Widowmaker is a weird one. I guess you could do Frenzy if you wanted to make a defensive play with it, but honestly it's between Slayer and Trigger Happy, and I think a lot less characters are going to be going with Trigger Happy, so since you can use it well for extra scope shots before being forced to reload, I'm going to stick Widow here. Ooh, Pharah is easily another Frenzy abuser. Pharah is already so mobile and so hard to tag down that whenever she does get that burst of movement speed from landing a last hit, it is just such a huge boon to her advantage, or being able to retreat and find cover. It is just so good on Pharah. Our first tank here, Reinhardt. While you could argue Last Stand, he doesn't really make use of it outside of charge, so I'm gonna go Unyielding is probably just the clear choice, unless you want to do some really silly charge shenanigans, point blank, but that's probably just gonna end up with you feeding. Unyielding allows Reinhardt to just tank so many things and just be more effective in the close range, more vulnerable position that he needs to play in. Ooh, Mercy. This is a rough one because GA with Resourceful along with a lower cooldown res is just massive. I think it might still be stronger than just having the giant heal. I think Resourceful just might be the most value on Mercy. You could argue Swift Save for the extra sympathetic healing or just big healing over time when somebody is low. But I think Resourceful lowering both of your important cooldowns, since you just get so much out of a lower cooldown GA, is really huge for Mercy. Torbjorn kinda uses all three pretty well. Frenzy is really funny, because you can overload after you've procced Frenzy and just absolutely run a team down. And Slayer's really good for just holding down a position and locking the enemy team out. just because you know where they are, especially if they've just escaped your turret or something. So it's really, both of these are really quite strong on Torb. I think there's going to be a lot of DPS in Frenzy, so I'll put him in Slayer for now, because it's definitely pretty interesting, especially whenever somebody is forced off of your turret at low HP. Next is Hanzo. Poor Hanzo, man. He gets nothing out of Trigger Happy. He already has Sonic Arrow, so Slayer's just a little bit redundant. And he really doesn't get anything out of Frenzy. Because if you're playing close range Hanzo, you just kind of gonna get rolled. So I'm just gonna put him in Slayer, because if you headshot somebody, they are usually getting out. So at least you know where they will be, so you can set up and punish the re-engage whenever they peek again. Winston is probably one of the best characters right now to just play for this test. It's so fun to just run around and do your thing, because Last Stand is just so powerful for these characters that want to be constantly brawling and fighting and coming in and out of the battle. Being able to leap in and drop your bubble and just cleave and trade, eat some abilities, and then leap out almost immediately. By the time you land and you're getting healed up, your bubble is already almost up again. It's just really strong. It heightens Winston's playstyle and allows you to be way more aggressive than you normally would be. So it's very fun and probably the best designed passive in general here. Zenyatta. Zenyatta, I think, is going to be one of the only ones that can't really use Resourceful, doesn't really care about Swift Save outside of Transcendence, and it's just, if you're on Zen, you're getting dove. So you're going to be dueling, you're going to be taking damage and fluctuating your HP a lot. So Close Call just goes such a far way because any bonus to Zen's mobility and thus survivability is super strong. And if you do have a favorable matchup, or if they've overextended and don't have the abilities to finish you off, you can just W key at somebody once they get you half HP and just kick them into a wall and chase them down super fast. It's super funny and rewards Zen for just existing at the backline and being the dive target. But most importantly, it's just because he doesn't really make use of either of these other ones. Ooh, Bastion. If Bastion wasn't so bad versus armor, I'd say Trigger Happy, especially since Assault Form gets such a large bonus. So I'm just gonna have to say probably Slayer or Frenzy. Since you do smaller bits of damage and people tend to get away from you, I'd say Slayer probably, so you know where they're going, how they're pathing, and then you can punish it where your team can. Unfortunately, characters like Bastion and later whenever we get to Soldier 76 that just got so heavily nerfed with the recent armor changes are just gonna struggle to really make use of any of these passives because they're just so bad in game right now whenever it comes to dealing and exchanging with the tank. Let's see, Symmetra is next. Symmetra's kind of in a similar boat, but I think Sim just, since she can go on those crazy flanks and things and get those orb picks, because you could chain getting a flank off and getting a successful kill with your orbs and a little bit of buzz down, and then just W key the enemy tank with that extra movement speed. And if they have a barrier, they're kind of just screwed because you're just going to be able to run them down, charge up your beam, and just kind of be like a really aggressive menace. So I say Frenzy is probably the way to go. It also allows you to, once you get a pick, escape to your teleporter quicker, which is just really nice for Sim overall. Alright, Zarya. Zarya can make use of Armored. It is just free stats. That's really good and allows Zarya to take a bit more damage when brawling and improve her matchup versus some of those characters that poke with smaller damage. But I'd say Last Stand as a brawl tank is just, it is so powerful, and from playing it myself, it is just so incredible just sitting there and fighting in that 50 HP range, going in and out and in and out, and just being able to proc bubble after bubble after bubble and just permanently having full charge. It is just really powerful, really fun for you, not really for anybody else. But the Last Stand is really strong on Zarya. Ooh, Cassidy. Cassidy can make decent use out of all of these. I'd probably be more in favor of Frenzy, but Trigger Happy allows you to get an extra shot or two. It's one extra shot with your fan, the hammer, which can be the difference in full clipping a squishy from point blank. So I'm gonna put him down over here in trigger happy just because not many characters really make use of this, and him actually getting a decent bonus in breaking through a threshold, even though he could definitely use either of these passives. Oh, Soldier. Soldier can definitely use trigger happy as well. He gets a lot out of Frenzy since he's already so mobile and wants to reposition so much. You could get use out of Slayer, but I think Frenzy's probably the way to go since you're normally cleaning up. The extra mobility is just so strong on those characters that want to reposition or get in and out of a fight. Lucio gets a lot from all of these passives. Swift Save is really good if you're playing more coordinated. Resourceful is also really strong, just lowering your cooldown of your crossfade. But for the way the majority people play Lucio, I'm gonna go close call because the extra movement speed whenever you're dueling somebody or another Lucio is really powerful and just plays into that more fun gameplay style that Lucio players can lean into. Roadhog. Armored is interesting and definitely strong, but I think you're kind of forced into going unyielding, especially since Ana gets a lot out of the support passives as well. She's just going to be picked way more often, so you're kind of forced into going unyielding or you're just going to die. Junkrat. Junkrat can make uses out of everything. An extra shot with trigger happy is pretty nice. Slayer is really good for going on flanks, and Frenzy is really fun too if you're doing like a Skyrack thing, so I'm gonna go with that just because it's a more active playstyle of Junkrat, and I've had a lot of fun with it. Just flying into the air at Mach 10, just going into a dive or shooting somebody while I'm flying across the sky is super fun. Alright, Diva. Not many characters are going to go here, and she definitely makes good use of Unyielding or Last Stand, especially Last Stand, because it lowers the cooldown of boosters so you're getting it off more often. But I'm going to put Diva in Armored, not because it's broken or like super good, even though extra damage mitigation for free is. When you demech Diva, Baby Diva has armor, which is hilarious, so that's where I'm going to keep her. Baby Diva with armor running around is just too good to pass up. It's so funny to see, it's so funny to play as. And the free damage mitigation is just gonna help you loop back into another mech, so it's honestly pretty good. Alright, Mei. Mei doesn't really use these very well, since her playstyle is just usually completely centered around punishing the tank's advance. You could argue Slayer so that you can punish people and wall them off and stuff whenever they're retreating or, you know, dipping out of a fight. Frenzy is also pretty good too for whenever you do get a pick, especially if it's on a tank. You just get to W key harder after you drop your wall. She doesn't really need trigger happy at all. It doesn't really change any breakpoints for her. And Mei's reload is decently fast, so you don't really mind reloading. Frenzy is pretty interesting, but I think I'm gonna go Slayer just because whenever you play Mei, it's more of an information and punish game anyways, so that just kind of plays into it and just gives you that bit of advantage whenever people are critical health. Genji is an easy Frenzy. It just does so much for him, even if he is kind of bad right now. Getting the extra movement speed after you get a pick is just huge and allows you to get away with just so much more as such a mobile character. Pretty much a no-brainer just to go with that one. You could argue a little bit of Slayer depending on like the game that you're playing, but Frenzy is like 90% of the time. Ana is a huge one. She uses all of these very well, and in combination with Swift Save and Nade, you can just heal so much, and whenever you nano somebody, it practically just heals them to full. It's honestly crazy. Close Call could be good too if you want that extra bit of mobility and you're playing in like a more everybody's kind of doing their own thing, like hyper casual match. I mean, Swift Save is just such a huge bonus. It's honestly between Resourceful and Swift Save for Ana. You get so much out of the cooldown reduction because you have slightly longer cooldowns that it actually shaves off a few seconds off of each cooldown, so that's pretty huge. Oh, we're gonna have a lot of supports going to Swift Save. This is super viable and super strong, but I'm gonna go Resourceful just because it plays more into the solo style for quick play, and having those seconds shaved off of Nade and Sleep is just huge. especially since tanks are going to be running unyielding on top of their already reduced sleep cooldown. You just, in case they eat it or if you need to shoot them, just getting that cooldown back faster is pretty big. Sombra. We could just do a little revert and give Sombra her old passive back, but I think Frenzy might be the way to go because you play as that punish assassin that wants to get out. Even though I could definitely see going Slayer and just playing more of the information game, but that's probably more for like a more coordinated setting, which Quick Play isn't. Orisa. Orisa could have even more armor. It's not very fun though. Unyielding is also really strong just because it gives you more CC resistance. But Last Stand is actually pretty interesting for Orisa. Because if you're playing that poke tank style versus like Rush or something, and they're up on you, getting that 50% or below where you still have armor is really huge, because your supports can heal you a little bit and you still have armor, and you can dance around that 50% HP, getting the bonus constantly and for longer without being as compromised as some other tanks, and just cycle through your CDs and be incredibly hard to kill. And cycling spears is really funny, so I'm gonna leave her up in Last Stand. Doomfist. Doomfist honestly just makes such good use out of all three of these passives. Armor on Doomfist goes super hard. Unyielding is also very powerful, and so is Last Stand if you are like completely diffing the enemy team. It allows you to just get some insane clips off. But I think for like general players and like more casual settings where you're just eating every single cooldown, Unyielding just goes so far on Doomfist and can just be the difference between you getting out of a fight and completely resetting or just dying. So I'd say Unyielding probably most of the time unless you're feeling spicy with Last Stand. Moira. I would argue Resourceful, just because cycling Moira's lowish CDs is really strong and just boosts her survivability so much. But Heal Orb plus Swift Save is just so much AoE healing. It makes everybody practically unkillable. It's just insane. The same can be said for Brig, who just goes silly. It's absolutely ridiculous how much healing this character can do with Swift Save through Inspire. It is just ridiculous. You could also go Resourceful if you're going like a more brawly Brig, but that's not normally the way you're playing it, so you'd already be in a situation where you're like, Resourceful is just kind of like a win more for Brig, whereas Swift Save is just so incredibly strong for this character, especially if you're playing her like any kind of competently at all where you're peeling for your backline. They just become unkillable around you. Speaking of unkillable, Ball doesn't really make use of Last Stand. You could if you're getting out and you're able to re-engage, but that's normally not happening because you're normally going for a full disengage, getting back to full HP and then re-engaging, going for a health pack or something. So I think Unyielding is easily the best way to go for Ball. That way, if you do get caught, it is 40% less effective on you. Ashe. Ashe is another one that actually makes pretty good use out of Trigger Happy. You could argue Slayer for punishing peak shots and people that get out at 1 HP, but just like with Widow, Trigger Happy allows you to get an extra shot or two off of your magazine whenever you're scoped in, which can be pretty big and allows you to have more uptime in your advantage or dueling state. Baptiste. Bap Shift with Swift Save is ridiculous, honestly. It is just so much healing for squishies, but I'm gonna have to go Resourceful because you go from like a 25-second cooldown all the way down to 20 seconds with Lamp, which is really huge. And it also in decreasing your shift so that you're just constantly proccing that AoE heal over time, and he just gets so much out of it because his CDs are so powerful. Sigma. Sigma can definitely make use out of any of these passives, but honestly, just putting some armor on Sig just goes so far in the poke war that it just makes him incredibly hard to punish, and it gives your supports an easier time because you're taking less damage while your shields are down and you're taking poke to the armor. Though you could definitely argue Unyielding just because it's free reduction on CC, and nobody really is going to not like that. Echo, just like with Pharah, is gonna be just an easy frenzy. Just these hyper mobile characters that go in and get a pick and disengage and fly around are just so powerful with that extra movement speed. It makes them just so incredibly hard to punish. Sojourn. I could see Sojourn going with really any. Frenzying while using Sojourn ult sounds pretty menacing, but I think she's another one that can make use of Trigger Happy, even though her reload isn't that long. Just having the extra chance, since she has a higher magazine count, to get off an extra decently charged rail shot or two before needing to reload can be pretty big. But that's more like min-maxing things, where in more general play you'd probably go with the other two. Junker Queen loves armor, absolutely loves unyielding, but the most fun overall is definitely Last Stand, where you can just chain shouts and axes and knives just over and over again. It's so fun because you're getting so much healing. You're just constantly dancing in the front line between low HP and high HP. It's a super fun playstyle, and it just plays into the most fun part of Junker Queen's kit. Let's see, Kiriko. So Kiriko uses these two just so well. The only difference is if you have another support that can heal well, or if they have an Ana or something, go resourceful so that you can just chain your cooldowns and just have Suzu up more often. But if you're playing with somebody else who's like on Zen or Lucio, who is not too worried about healing and just giving value in other ways where you're forced to kind of be the main healer, going Swift Save just turns Kiriko's primary fire healing, which is already really high, and the AoE from Suzu just into monstrous levels of healing. Especially if there's a debuff, it is just insane. Ramatra makes great use of unyielding, but in Nemesis form, being able to cycle your cooldowns while blocking is just broken. It is super good. It's almost as good as Winston and Zarya using this passive. It is super strong. Lifeweaver, you could argue resourceful, but honestly, Lifeweaver in most casual play and stuff is just expected to heal bot, and that's what most of them do anyways. So Swift Save is just going to be the safe pick just to pad stats and get tree more often, which goes insanely hard and is even more of just an instant teamfight win with Swift Save. Idiari is one of those, like Zen. You could argue Swift Save just to get more healing out of Pylon, but honestly, Close Call goes super hard and allows you to relocate even better, because whenever you get dove or your team starts losing the fight or you start losing the poke fight, you just take that damage, you're below half HP, you get the free movement speed, you do the boop tech away with your burst, go flying at Mach 10, and then you're reset for the next fight and completely away from that compromised position to go set up your pylon or whatever. Is really strong on Alari, who is already very selfish in their playstyle and quite powerful. Mauga could be fun with Last Stand. I can definitely see the argue for it, and it's probably really good, but unyielding, just like with Hog, is probably 100% just the way to go. That way, if they do play some kind of disabling thing or Ana, you just have a chance at all versus them. So yeah, unfortunately those two characters are just kinda locked into using unyielding just because their counters are so potent. And lastly, Venture makes decent use out of all of the passives. You get an extra 2 shots, I believe, from Trigger Happy, which is pretty big, especially since Venture's reload is so long. Slayer's pretty good for chasing people down and compromising their position whenever they retreat, but honestly, Frenzy is just so hard, especially since you can still do the one-shot combo, so you pretty much have a free way to instantly proc the ability and then burrow underground and move around super fast. So it's just really strong and really fun with Venture. They're really fun with that. But yeah, that's the tier list for this quick play hacked. I really wish they would extend the duration, like I said, because this is actually super cool, and these are the kinds of changes that if we do stay in this format or really any other 5v5 format, that need to be made to further differentiate characters and allow people to flex into different playstyles. That way there is more expression and variance in the game. So all in all, a really exciting event or patch or whatever you want to call it that just adds a lot of exciting things to the game and is just a really good experiment for the steps forward if we're going to stay in a 5v5 format. I think it's super cool. Let me know down below what y'all think. There are definitely some problematic things, like look at how many DPS characters are in Frenzy. It's just way too good to pass up for the majority of characters. And some of these, like trigger happy, resourceful, armored, and unyielding, are just kind of boring and poorly designed because their benefit is free, you just exist, and that's not really good design because it's boring, it's not interactive, and it doesn't really play into the gameplay loop at all. It's just a free benefit for literally no investment, besides just not choosing the other passive, which is kind of lame, and I hope that if they do something like this in the future, they do more passives, like Last Stand, like Frenzy, like Swift Save and Close Call, that are, you know, they require you to actually do or participate in something to get their benefit, and then that benefit allows you to either reset or push your advantage or make another play, which is really exciting and really good for Overwatch. Because a big thing that people are struggling with right now, especially tank players, is feeling like they have impact despite all of the stats and stuff, just because there is such a discrepancy in kill times and the ability to make plays. It's nice that the devs are doing something like this within the 5v5 format to try and increase individual skill expression and playstyle and increase the impact of a player's actions. But that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about everything down below, and I'll see you later.